Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Dave Listens to Hi-Fi. So today I want to talk about the concept of golden ears. I don't know if you've heard this term with regards to audiophiles. Usually refers to someone with a really sensitive hearing or more refined hearing or more selective hearing, someone who can really discern the difference between components and cables and can really hear into a system quite well. And there is some dispute over whether or not golden ears actually exist. Sometimes it's used as a term of derision, and it's something that I've been thinking about. And recently I got two bits of information. One was a BBC News article, and the other one was a TED Talk that I watched online. And I related both of these to the concept of golden ears, and it kind of reinforced my thoughts around it and gave me some real good scientific knowledge that proves the possibility that someone can have enhanced hearing and can have better hearing and the ability to discern things that others maybe cannot. So today that's what I want to talk about, and I'd love to have a conversation about it with you in the comments if you have any thoughts and ideas about it as well. So recently I came across a couple of bits of information that, I'm always thinking about audio, and I'm often relating things that I find in other facets of life and seeing how they relate to audio. And so there was this one BBC news article, are noise-canceling headphones to blame for young people's hearing problems? And it goes on to discuss a disorder called auditory processing disorder. And then the other bit of information that I saw was a TED Talk that I saw online, and it was about emotions. It was a TED Talk by Lisa Feldman Barrett, and it was called You Aren't at the Mercy of Your Emotions, Your Brain Creates Them. And in that, she goes on to mention how emotions are not necessarily involuntary. Your body receives the sensory input, and then your brain actually decides which emotions to attribute to those inputs, and so you can have more control over your emotions. It's not that your emotions should be controlling you. It's actually you, with some training, can figure out what kind of emotions you choose to feel when you have certain kinds of input. There is one thing that they've mentioned, and other people in the comments to that TED Talk have mentioned it as well, the idea that nervousness and excitement are basically the same thing. And when you go into something and you're nervous about it, if you just switch your mindset a little bit to say, I'm not nervous about it, I'm excited about it, then that can really help you overcome certain fears and nervousness around, public speaking or flying or whatever. You can just kind of decide to feel the excitement rather than the nervousness because they're such a similar emotion, such a similar physical expression of it in your body, and then your mind is basically interpreting that the way that you've decided to, or the way that you've been trained to. To bring it back to the BBC article, they're talking about noise-canceling headphones, and the problem was that there's young people who are having trouble hearing lectures at school, or having trouble hearing the words on TV. They got to run the subtitles when they're watching a movie, and because the words that they're hearing sound like gibberish. They're having trouble hearing, and these kids go to the audiologist and they test their hearing, and their hearing is fine. They play signals, and their ears actually process the signals, and they go into their brains, and they have full frequency response. They have sensitive hearing down to a certain level. So there's no actual physical problem with the hearing. What the problem is, and they're finding it in neurodivergent people, but also in people with extensive use of noise-canceling headphones. When your brain does not have to pick out sounds out of a kind of a background of noise, it gets more lazy. When you have noise-canceling headphones on and you're listening to an ebook or a video or something, that's all you're hearing. In real life, when you have conversations going on in noisy environments, your brain actually has to filter out all the noise. I did a video about rooms and how the cocktail party effect is a phenomenon that your brain uses to pick out sounds out of a certain background of noise. And I think it actually helps to hear a system and kind of ignore the ambient sound of the room, although it does add, obviously, to the sound. I think that you have a better ability to discern the sound of a system because your brain can process this separately. And when people wear noise-canceling headphones for a long time, their brains lose this ability. Now, this processing is the processing of sounds for your brain to understand them, what they are. That kind of finishes developing in your late teens. So, young adults are particularly susceptible to this if they don't exercise that ability. So if they're not in noisy environments so much and listening to lecturers where there's noise around and watching movies and trying to hear the dialogue above all the sound effects and everything, if you haven't developed that sense, then your hearing is good, but your listening is not. And that's something that they mentioned in that article, that hearing and listening are two very different concepts. So that's one element of it. And then on the TED Talk, about your emotions, it was sort of related to that in terms of how your brain is trained to process input and then react to it. And you can train your brain, and you can train how you react to things, and you can actually choose which emotions you want to associate with certain input. And in this TED Talk, she shows this image. I'll put it up on the screen for you. And it's basically just an image, black and white splotches. You see it, there's nothing there. And what she mentions in the talk is that your brain is actually running away, like trying to process this, trying to figure out what's there. Often we'll see a face. The human brain loves to see faces. We love recognizing a face. That's why we see a face in the front of a car, or on a house, or in a cloud or something. We're especially adapted to see faces. So you may even see a face in all these splotches and black and white marks. But basically there's no recognition from the brain. And you see this and you don't know what's there, and it just looks like it's gibberish. It's just visual gibberish. And then what she did was she took that image, and I guess it had been oversaturated, color had been taken out, too much contrast and all the color taken out, so it's just basically black and white. Then when she kind of restores the picture, you see the image of a snake. And you can see the outline of the snake, and you can see primarily the coloring on the snake's skin. And so when you see the picture in full color and everything, yes, we recognize that as a snake because we have a lot more information there. When she reduces the information back to the original photo, once you've seen the snake, you can pick out the snake out of that same image. And what's happened there is your brain has learned. It has adapted. Now, our visual sensitivity is no better the first time we see it than after we see it after seeing the full color picture. But when we look at it, we can then discern that there's a snake there, just because we've had more information, we've had more experience, and we've seen the image in a different context. And so that really got me thinking about golden ears and the ability for people to hear things in stereo systems. There's always online debates about cables and whether or not cables make a difference. Different speakers, amplifiers. I mean, some people even think that all amplifiers sound the same. Amplifiers with the same specs should sound the same. And I know for myself that it's definitely not the case. I've listened to many different amplifiers, and it's usually pretty easy to pick up the differences between them. And what this got me thinking was in that, especially with that image where you see nothing, and then she shows you the picture of the snake, and then you look at that image again and you see the snake. Once you've been given that information, because your senses are no more sensitive the second time around, but you have learned, but your brain has learned, it's easier to use that experience to pick things out of that sensory input. So I think when people have listened to hi-fi systems and importantly done experiments where you switch one variable, you isolate a variable, you listen to something and then you switch a cable. And then you listen again, and then you switch it back, and then you listen again, and maybe you put a different cable in, and you listen again, or you listen to a song, you listen to 2 songs, you change the toe in or toe out of your speakers, you listen again, you change one thing, and you really listen to the effects of that. And once you have experience doing experiments like this and trying different things and trying a multitude of different things and isolating the variable, listening to one specific change at a time, you become very accustomed to the differences in sound that can make. And then if you go and reproduce that type of experiment in the future, if I go and buy a different set of speaker cables and put them in, my brain's already adapted to hearing those differences that can exist. And then if I put it in and I hear a difference, it's something that I've been trained to do. And someone without that same experience, someone who hasn't tried different speaker cables, they change a cable, maybe they don't hear anything, and then they say, oh, cables don't make a difference. But someone who's tried many, many different speaker cables, in and out, isolating the variable, putting different tracks, living with them for a while, switching back, really trying a variety of different ways to experience the audio system as it is, and then making that change. Someone who does that a lot, they might be able to discern a difference that someone else couldn't hear, even in the same system, even in the same environment. And so with related to visuals, with related to emotions, with related to hearing in that other specific instance with this, with the noise canceling headphones, these are all things that lead me to believe that yes, it is possible for people to hear things that other people cannot. And it's not the matter of that your ears are better, or I can't hear above a certain frequency. I'm sure at my age, my ability to hear above 15 kilohertz is definitely diminished almost completely. But that's not what makes me able to hear differences in amplifiers. What makes me able to hear differences in amplifiers is the experience I've had listening to tens of dozens of different amplifiers in different systems and switching them out, only changing the amplifier and listening for extended periods and listening to another one and using it with different speakers and really trying all these different things to notice the sound of an amplifier. Once I switch an amplifier in, I have lots of experience. And so I can hear that. Someone without that same experience, maybe they put a different amplifier in and they say, I don't notice anything. And very well be that they may not notice anything, but to someone who has the experience, who has golden ears, I want to make it sound like someone's better than the other. It's just they're more experienced. They may be able to hear that difference that someone else can't. So this is what I've recently come across. This is what I've been thinking about. Thank you for watching Dave Listens to Hi-Fi. If you like what I do, please subscribe. Please give me a like. It helps the channel. And if you have any thoughts about this, please leave them in the comments. I'd love to start a little discussion, and we can talk about whether or not we can learn how to listen better. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Dave listens to Hi-Fi. Dave listens to Hi-Fi.